You're listening to Size Matters by Lulu M. Sylvian.
Chapter 1. Fists of Furry. A vampire, a werewolf and a demon walk into a bar. Sounds like the beginning of a joke. But no, not a joke, just my life. Possibly the most screwed up night of my life. And probably the best one ever. I thought I had a good, original costume, until I saw the group of furries. 3 fine male bodies in skin-tight low-pile furred bodysuits. Pecs and upper arm muscles exposed. Boy band meets werewolf group costume in all of their hotness. No shirts, of course. Why would they? They were already wearing fur bodysuits. And they were really good suits. Someone had their PhD in cosplay. They were as stereotypical as they came. The blonde bad boy wolf wore a bandana tied over his head, open vest and heavy chains. And just to drive home the point he was biker bad, the neck chain wasn't gold but a motorcycle drive chain, and he had on fingerless driving gloves to show off the claws. The fursona heads were seamlessly put together, and had to have some heavy-duty animatronics. They showed personality, each one's features were as different as faces. Impressively, the lips and jaws moved. The posh spice member of the group had darker fur, wore designer sunglasses and a designer suit. Again, no shirt but plenty of rippling muscles. Why would any of them have on shirts? They were there to show off their gym memberships and some fine-ass costumery. The third one, another dark wolf, had to be the wholesome one. His jacket was slightly zipped, practically modest. He wore a sparkling white tracksuit with red stripes and had white sweatbands at his wrist. Or maybe he was the Playboy tennis instructor. "Do you see these guys?" I asked Vinyana. I felt increasingly lame in my tossed-together vampire slayer costume, based on a conglomeration of some old movies. I wore tight pants and a corset because, of course, one must be girded to the point of bruised ribs to fight vampires. I had a crossbow strapped to my thigh. I thought I so cleverly handcrafted it from a thrift store cross, some wire coat hangers and duct tape. 2 bandoliers crisscrossed my chest, and yes, I strategically pinned them in place. One must emphasize the girls in a costume like this. One I had filled with test tubes of vodka. Anyone who asked was told they were holy water. And the other had sharpened sticks. I might have ruined the pencil sharpener at work. Vin turned her attention to the group in question, raked them hard up and down with an assessing gaze, and shrugged. "I didn't think you went in for furries." She wore a too tight, too short schoolgirl uniform. The shirt was completely unbuttoned and tied at her waist, with a red lace push-up bra. It looked like the standard store-purchased slutty Halloween wear, but it all came from her closet, and her private school upbringing. She had the body for it, so why not? She looked like a classic, underaged teen pop princess in all of her hit me baby glory. I bet her mother wouldn't have kept the uniforms if she had known how Vin would be wearing them 7 years later. "I go in for hard bodies and good costumes," I replied and took a sip of my cocktail. I had added one of the vials of vodka, for a heftier kick. "Oh," was all she said. "Oh, what?" I still had my eyes on the boy band, wondering if they might break into a choreographed dance routine. Vin tugged on my bandolier. I looked at her. She stood like a statue, staring at something across the club. I followed her gaze, then stopped. "Oh," I also said. It was a miracle that I could manage a full syllable. Across the room stood the most glorious example of manhood. I swear the heavens opened and rays of light shone down on him. A host of angels sang a chorus for his very being. He was tall. He had glorious long black hair that fell past his belt. It had to be a good wig, a very good wig. He wore layered robes. The red outermost robe had those long butterfly-like sleeves. Daggers or something, they were long and narrow, tucked into his tied sash, and he held a fan in his hand. He was the personification of every good-looking ancient Chinese fantasy movie and anime man from feudal times. "I saw him first," Vin said as she launched herself across the room at the prize of the night. Problem was, she wasn't the only one to have seen this god on earth walk into the club. I stood there like a rank idiot and just watched as wave after wave of women approached him. Within seconds, he was surrounded by his very own harem of sexy nurses, genies, and slutty cops. Not going after the hottie dressed like an anime hero might have been the best thing I never did. He moved, carried away by his wake of admirers, and my gaze drifted, then locked with a pair of piercing green eyes. The eyes blinked, and I swore they glowed. It felt as if I couldn't break free of their hold if I wanted to, which I didn't. I didn't care who or what those eyes belonged to. I was theirs. Sucked in like an alien tractor beam. I probably would have stayed perfectly still until their owner consumed me, if one of the furry boys hadn't backed up into me, jostling me so that I staggered and spilled my drink down my front. "Oh hey. Are ya alright? Sorry, my bad." I stared at him, as he blotted the worst of the spill from my hip with his tail. The drink had splashed along my side and down my leg. Dazed, I was aware of how considerate he was being, not handsy at all. Not too much else made it into my brain at that point. No, don't use your tail. You don't want to get that dirty." I reached out for his tail, and tried to get him to stop. "Your costume," I sighed. The fur felt real, not fake. Damn, that was an expensive work of art, not some simple Halloween getup. He should not have been blotting up a spilled drink with it. His attention turned to my face, and I saw a sparkle in his clear amber eyes. I swear the puppetry in that mask was the bomb, because he was smiling. And I was right, he was the wholesome humble boy of the band. He gave me another sweet wolfish grin, I was dying to know how that was even possible, and left me alone. I scanned the party looking for who those green eyes belonged to. I felt bereft of purpose without them. I bumped and jostled my way to the dance floor. I circumnavigated the entire party, trying to catch a pair of glowing green eyes. I had no idea what the face they belonged to looked like. I didn't know if my moment in time had been with a woman or a man, I just knew I needed to look into those eyes again. I caught glimpses of Vin and the harem she had joined around the hottie anime guy, and I saw my furry band. Wholesome Cutie and I caught each other's glances a few times. What did he look like under all that costuming? Beautiful people don't hide behind masks. A very proper British accent caressed my ear. I turned and froze. Those eyes. With a gulp, I managed to reanimate myself long enough to focus. I was being presented with a glass of champagne. The man who presented it, the man with the eyes, hadn't bothered with a costume. And if he had, I wasn't familiar with the reference. I was pretty sure his black-on-black suit and tie, complete with black shirt, was not a costume. He had cheekbones that would give paper cuts, and a chiseled jaw so determined that mountains moved out of his way. His skin was cool and pale, his lips ever so red. And he wore his longish black hair slicked back. It had nothing lengthwise on hottie anime man. I nodded at the champagne flute. "No thank you. I don't accept drinks from strangers in bars. Not unless it's handed to me directly from the bartender, and I watch them make it." It took a lot for me to say that. I wanted to reach out and take what he was offering. I was losing the fight against years of tactical self-defense, because my arm moved on its own up towards that glass. I was saved when he drank it himself. Tossing it back with a shrug and a cocked eyebrow. Interesting. I should know better than to offer a drink to someone who wants to kill me. "Who are you?" I had no clue who he was, so why would I want him dead? Unless he was the asshole who cut me off on my commute home from work the other day. But I thought I had gotten over that, and no longer harbored road rage-induced homicidal thoughts. He reached up and stroked a knuckle down the side of my face, and around to caress the other side. "My beautiful vampire slayer, let me get you a drink." I was entranced by those eyes again. Yes, champagne. How rude of me to have declined such a generous offer. He turned and walked away. I followed. A strong arm around my waist whisked me away from my path. "Ho there, darlin', you owe me a dance." I was suddenly face to face with the biker wolf. "Oh. Okay." I was confused. I couldn't remember where I had just been, what I had just been doing. My tongue wanted champagne for some reason. This wasn't a champagne kind of party. It wasn't cheap beer in red plastic cups either, somewhere in between. I needed a drink, something tart and sweet. I leaned into Furboy as we danced. Can we go get a drink after this? The music had a bump and grind edge to it. Before I knew it, I was in the middle of a furry sandwich. I grooved with the biker boy, and the wholesome cutie had a hand on my hip, taking up the rear. It was not a bad dance sandwich to be in, especially since I got a sample of what was hiding under wholesome cutie's costume, as he grinded against my ass. I got too hot. I waved my hand at my face, and thought how smart the anime guy had been to bring a fan. Drink? Biker boy asked. I nodded. Lady wants a drink, he yelled to his fur patriot. With a hand wrapped around my arm, and another on my back, I felt properly escorted to the bar. What do you want? Water and a Cosmo on ice, I replied. Biker boy leaned over the bar and ordered. Wholesome cutie produced a wallet from somewhere and paid. They stood on either side of me as I drained the water, and began sipping the Cosmo. I had my own personal drink guards. What are your names? I yelled over the music. They both shook their heads. What do you think our names should be? I mean, I get it, you're like some K-pop Spice Boy furry band, but I can't keep calling you Biker Boy and Wholesome Cutie. Oh, and your friend Posh Spice. They laughed, punched each other on the shoulders, and crowded in a little closer. You can call me Biker, that works. She needs to keep calling? Cutie shut up real quick before he said something he wasn't supposed to. He gave a sharp nod, him Posh, 'cause that's funny as hell. So I can call you Cutie? I asked. Biker hit him on the chest again and laughed. I'm not cute. Call me Goliath. Isn't that a giant? I asked. I'm a giant where it counts. He leered at me. So much for thinking him sweet and considerate. What should my name be then? I thought I heard Goliath mutter bait under his breath. Biker punched him again. No real names tonight. You understand. Don't tell anyone your real name. Biker's eyes were so intense. So you want me to tell everyone I'm Gloria Estefan? The no real names thing was a little confusing, but okay, it could be fun. Only if Gloria isn't your name. I swatted at his chest. No, Gloria Estefan is a pop singer. My name is... A furred hand covered my mouth. My eyes went wide. Don't tell us tonight. You can tell us later. I nodded with the hand still covering half of my face. I'm drunk, I announced. We can tell, Biker said. I'm hot, you must be dying in all that fur. I had already been drinking, and the Cosmo had gone straight to my personal inner editor and inhibitions manager, and knocked her out cold. I ran my hand through the fur on Goliath's chest. I turned and did the same to Biker Boy. This feels like real fur. You really go all out. Biker wrapped a clawed hand around my wrist and removed my hand from his chest. Not a good idea, darlin'? I dropped my hand with a pout. Biker wasn't being any fun. Thanks for the drink, fellas. I was ready to ditch the furry twins and see what kind of fun the beautiful anime man and his harem were up to. Besides, I needed to check in with Vin. It had been a while since I saw her. I need to go find my friend. I pushed away from between them and stumbled directly into the arms of the green-eyed man. Hello again, he purred. Hi, I felt all soft and warm and fuzzy around him. Like I just wanted to drape over something and wear dark red velvet. I was hoping to bump into you. His eyebrows lifted, and the tip of his tongue flicked out and licked his lower lip. This is the night for things to go bump, I flirted back. He laughed as he slid a hand down my arm and guided me away into the depths of the club. I twisted to wiggle my fingers in farewell to the wolves, only to see them following at a discreet distance. They could follow me like lost puppies if they wanted, but I had no plans on adopting the whole litter. I could only take one stray home at a time. This gorgeous man led me to the back hall, where he pushed me against the carpeted wall, and was on me. His cool lips nibbled at my jaw and then my neck. I threaded my fingers into his dark hair and pulled his mouth up to mine. His mouth crushed my lips and we consumed each other. My hips pulsed against his as he ground against mine. Our clothing, the only barrier preventing us from actually having sex in public. I wanted more of him. My tongue caught on a sharp tooth as I snaked it into his mouth. Ow! I pressed my fingers against my mouth at the sharp pain of the mood killer. I stopped rocking my hips and eased him back a bit. I thought we were having fun? He asked in that knee-weakening accent of his. My finger came away with blood after I touched it to the side of my tongue. You have ridiculously sharp teeth, I complained as I panted. He took my finger with a spot of blood and sucked it into his mouth. That did wild and crazy things to my insides. Nerves lit up like a Christmas tree strung with firecrackers. My hips reacted on their own. They did not want the fun to end. At the same time, my brain revolted. No, that was blood, not cool. He had no idea what my health history was. And while I was perfectly willing to suck his face and hump like clothed bunnies without knowing his name, there were just some bodily fluids that required a name, and maybe a full blood panel. The realization of our situation slammed into me, at full sobriety. I no longer felt languid and liquid in his presence. I saw two of my furry bodyguards arrive and cross their arms, like so much muscle, right behind my paramour. Good timing, guys, I said, bright and brittle. I feel like the mood has changed around here. My green-eyed seducer gave me an oblique glare, and turned his attention to the pack at his back. Gentlemen? They stood there nodding, looking like movie heavies. My leg was still hiked around his hips, and he still had me pressed back to the wall, only instead of necking, we were having some kind of a showdown. You okay, Gloria? Biker asked with a sharp lift to his head. Your name is Gloria, the seducer purred. I shook my head. Names? No, he cut me off. Tonight is not the night for true names. Gloria it is. And Gloria I wanted to be, for the rest of my life. The way he said it rekindled some of those happy party nerves. So what's not your name? I finally asked. After all, we were still pushed hip to hip, and it seemed like I should know his name since he hadn't done the embarrassed thing and jumped away from me. His presence against me spoke volumes regarding what he thought was going to happen. Vlad. Nice to make your acquaintance, Vlad. I slithered my leg down his and bumped him away with a hip thrust. I was feeling a little boxed in between Vlad and the way the fur boys loomed. I held my hands up, fingers splayed as if I was showing them I held no weapons as I stepped away from all three of them. I need to go find my friend whose name is definitely not Brittany. Maybe we can pick this up again later, but right now, not feeling the vibe. I ducked into the crowd and hid behind the pulsing bodies on the dance floor. Chapter 2. The Nose Knows. Things were a lot less claustrophobic out from under the watchful gazes of the fur boys and Vlad. At least that answered my unasked question of what he was dressed up as. I must have cut my tongue on cheap costume vampire fangs. Dance floor bodies pressed into me, and I bounced along to the music. I really should find Vin. I doubt she got any closer to the anime guy than a distant harem member. He certainly had a draw. If I hadn't been so enthralled by Vlad and his green eyes, I probably would have fawned after the man myself. I let the current of the dance floor move me around. I got a fairly decent view of most of the club this way. Dancing and looking, it felt self-indulgent, so I convinced myself it was serving double duty. The only problem with that, it wasn't as efficient as I would have liked. Either I wasn't paying attention, or I just wasn't seeing the hottie and his entourage, including Vin. I bounced my way out of the throng and began looking for her in earnest. Vin, you in here? I called out into the restroom. No Vin in here, was the response I got. I did the same for the men's room, and the replies were a lot ruder. Not that I expected her in here, she was a good girl through and through. But I had to cover my bases. Well, are you screwing a schoolgirl or not? I asked. Rude got rude in return. He's screwing his hand, there's only one pair of boots in that stall, the guy at the urinal told me. Okay, no Vin in the bathrooms. She wasn't along the make-out wall either. Sorting through the dancers took a little more work. I felt like a total chump when I realized I could see the entire dance floor from the raised seated area. She wasn't there. Hey, I asked as I approached the bouncer on the door. Do you remember a tall guy, wearing Asian robes, with super long ass hair? He nodded with a grunt. I took that as a yes. Did he leave? He take something of yours? Possibly. You don't remember if an Indian Britney Spears was with him? You know, sexy schoolgirl outfit? I asked with a hopeful grin. I probably just looked manic. He had a few chicks with him. One of them yours? Yeah, I sighed. One of them's mine. The schoolgirl? Bouncer man shrugged, and I was left not knowing if Vin had left with the guy or not. I pulled myself from my thigh holster. The skin-tight yoga pants under my costume had no pockets, so I had to add some. Besides, strapping things to thighs just added to the badassera of my costume. And while I admit to having a pinch of nerves at first over the thigh accents because I had mighty thighs, I was pretty sure Vlad couldn't have cared less that I didn't have a thigh gap. He got between them just fine. There were no messages from Vin. I sent her one, not expecting a reply. I hadn't checked my phone first. I didn't think she would either. How long had it been since I had seen her? Since I had seen hottie anime man? I didn't want to panic, but I was getting worried. This was Vin. She didn't run off with guys she met in clubs. Sure, she tended to be dressed one way when she left home, and then changed. She liked to dress up and show off, and her parents were crazy strict. But that was pretty much it for her. Her idea of follow-through was not going home with a guy, and meeting him for coffee a day or two later. She didn't do hookups. She just didn't. Also, she didn't ditch and run when we went out together. I had other friends who saw no problems doing that to me, but not Vin. Never Vinyana. I hit the dance floor again, but this time instead of getting swept up in the beat, I shoved and pushed my way through groups of partiers. No Vin. No hot anime guy. I saw the fur boys and Vlad at the corner of the bar, making appreciative glances at various women. One overly flirtatious fairy stood in the middle of them, and ran her hands over Biker's furry chest the way I had. She was tiny in comparison to the tall men. Is that how I looked when I was in their midst? And why had I left that position? Vlad was gorgeous, and so were the furries, in that I refused to admit that I might have grown up having the hots for an animated Fox character kind of way. I wanted to boot her out of the spotlight and resume being annoyed by the way they loomed over me. But as I fought my way through the throng over to them, this wasn't about me. Hey Goliath, I said, tugging on his sleeve. Gloria, what's the matter? Suddenly I was back in the middle of the three men, and a very annoyed fairy. Her little wings quivered with anger. I'm sorry. I swiped at my eyes and failed at not crying. I don't know anybody here except for you guys, and I can't find my friend. I think she left with that hot anime guy with the long wig. I sniffed, both pissed off that I was this freaked about Vin and completely freaked about Vin. Biker wrapped a hand around my upper arm, his claws bit into flesh. What does she look like? He practically growled. She's dressed as a sexy schoolgirl. Like Britney Spears in that video from way back. He pushed past me and stormed out into the party. Vlad had a handkerchief and dabbed at my eyes. He stroked my hair as he cussed under his breath. Blow, he instructed. The fairy was gone, and Goliath was on the phone. Did you see him leave? I thought you were tracking him, he grumbled. I couldn't tell if he was asking me or Vlad. Vlad shook his head. I allowed myself to become distracted, he said with a lift of a single eyebrow and a head nod at me. I didn't see any sexy schoolgirls, Biker said as he returned. Do you have anything of hers? I shook my head. No, wait, yeah. Her jacket. I reached into my thigh holster and routed around. I brandished my coat check ticket with triumph. Biker snagged it from my hand and turned back into the throng. I followed, with Vlad and Goliath in my wake. We caught up with Biker at the coat check as they handed over the 2 jackets I had checked in. Biker placed my jacket to his nose and inhaled before handing it over to me. With Vin's, he took a much deeper inhale, like he was trying to identify her scent or something. He handed the hoodie over to Goliath, who did the same. Their eyes met for a split second, and they went back into the club. They were taking their persona a little too far with the whole wolf and scent tracking thing. Vlad and I stood near the coat check, and he helped me with my jacket. The club was hot with all the bodies, but I felt a chill in my bones. I must have unconsciously leaned into him, because I was suddenly aware of his arm around me, and his hand rubbing my arm in a brisk warm-up rub. They'll be able to tell if she's still here in a few minutes. Are you sure she didn't mention going out for a smoke? She doesn't smoke. She didn't text me. I mean, maybe she's just walking someone back to their car in a group for safety, you know? But she would have said something. She wouldn't have left with some guy. That goes against everything she believes. The only reason we're here and staying so late is because she's spending the night. What? Is she an actual schoolgirl? A sleepover? Vlad scoffed. No, her parents are very strict. It's a cultural thing. She doesn't like to piss them off or worry them. So we sneak around the edges of the rules. And your parents? I swear he looked down his nose at me. I got kicked out of the nest when I was 18. Bye-bye, we're turning your bedroom into a sewing room for your mother. And I don't like pissing off Vin's parents either. Her mom's a really good cook. I crossed my arms and pouted. Vlad laughed at me. She's not here, Goliath announced as they returned. Biker handed over Vin's jacket. We've got to go. If she's out there, the sooner we leave, the sooner we can find her. I followed them out of the club. Vlad kept his arm around me. Hey, what about your friend Posh Spice? I stopped in my tracks, a few feet into the night air. We shouldn't leave him. You should at least tell him you're going. He left a long time ago, Goliath said to us while he listened to something on his phone. He slammed his phone into a pocket, with obvious frustration. Still not picking up? Biker asked. Nope. Vlad stood next to me as we watched Biker and Goliath turn in circles. They both had their noses up high and were sniffing. Goliath squatted and began sniffing closer to the ground. Really? I asked. This was getting ridiculous. Biker did something similar, a little farther up the street. This way. He took off at a jog. I can't run in these shoes, I yelled as Vlad took off after them, yanking on my hand. He dragged me for maybe 20 feet, before I finally got my hand out of his grasp. He raked me with a glare and huffed when he finally saw my shoes. They were for looks and dancing, and for giving my legs a longer line while only wearing lingerie. They were not for running. Fine. He stomped back to me. I'll carry you. I laughed. Vlad was tall and on the thin side. And while I'm sure he had rangy muscular strength, there was no way he was going to be able to carry me. My substantial thighs supported some serious squish. He sneered at me, as if I judged his ability to lift me. Which I did. He turned his back to me. Jump up, piggyback. What? You heard me, piggyback. Spit spot, let's go, or we're going to lose our wolfish friends. I placed my hands on his shoulders, and lifted one leg to his hip. He wrapped one hand under my leg, ducked down, and with a heft got me onto his back. As I swung my other leg up, he caught it. A minor jostle of adjustment, and he was off to the races. I had to tie my arms around his upper chest to hold on. I expected to be bounced around like riding a pony for the first time, and not understanding how to rock along with the movement, but that wasn't an issue. Vlad ran smooth like he was on rails. It was unreal. We didn't exactly catch up. Goliath waited for us, at a corner. When he saw that we had eyes on him, he took off down the street. After we made the corner, I swear I saw Biker's pale tail but at dog level, turn into another street, or maybe it was an alley, and then Goliath disappeared around the same corner as if he chased after a dog. And we came following after. I hadn't seen a dog. I saw a wolf, it had to be. It was too huge. I tried to pull back on Vlad, like I had reins on him or something. I did not want to get closer to that beast. Vlad slowed, but he did not stop. I squirmed. Put me down, I demanded. "Would you hold still or I'll drop you," he said through clenched teeth. "That's a freaking wolf or something, and I don't want it to eat me." "Your friends aren't going to eat you unless you ask nicely. Now hold still," he chastised me. I strengthened my grip on him. I now counted on him to protect me from the big bad wolf. Only I might have been wrong about it being bad. Goliath approached. The beast turned its head, took a brief look at the costumed man, and turned its attention back to whatever it was sniffing. Goliath squatted down and pulled out his phone. He held it out. It looked like the animal was listening to it too. With a nod, Goliath stood up and walked back to where we were finally catching up. Vlad let me slip off his back. I ran my hands down the front of my clothes, as if resituating them. Goliath gave me a long pointed stare. Posh has eyes on the mark. There are several women with him. The problem we have run into is how they got from here to there. What do you mean? I asked. Your friend sent, and the scent of others came this way. And it just ends right here. All of their scents just stop. Could they have gotten into a car? I asked. Goliath and Vlad stared at me. Gloria dear, look where we are. Vlad gestured to the alley. It was narrow, and boxes and garbage built up against the buildings. We had passed through a hole in a chain-link fence. There was no way a car could have been back there, or driven out. My mouth made an O shape. Okay, no car. A motorcycle? A scooter? Goliath shook his head. We'd still be able to catch her scent. There was a sizzle and pop. Purple lightning crackled in the air over our heads. I gasped, startled. Vlad crouched down with a hiss, and I swear I saw fangs extend that were not in his mouth earlier. Goliath grabbed me and put me behind him, and the pale wolf growled and bared his monstrous teeth. We all focused on the roiling clouds that smelled like ozone and sulfur. I hope you know how to fight, Goliath said a split second before creatures began crawling out of the hole in the air. Chapter 3. Demon Night. About a dozen things, creatures, people? Not people but very human-like, crawled from the rift in the night. They were a dark-burned mummified skin and bone. No flesh, no muscle, skin-wrapped skeletons. Wisps of long dark hair grew in clumps on their scalps. They were barely covered in the shredded remains of what looked like blood-soaked rags. I didn't scream, but I might have made a gurgle sound deep in my throat. Demons, Vlad hissed and jumped into the middle of them and began shredding limbs from bodies. It was hard to keep track of how many there were. Especially when they broke apart, and limbs went flying in different directions. Holy Mother of God, I muttered and scrambled for the crossbow. Its base was a real cross, and I hoped that it was fully charged the way crosses are supposed to be against things like this. Goliath backed me against a brick wall and crouched in front of me, tearing into any of the things that got close enough. The way the things moved made me think of a swarm, and if there had been more, maybe that's what they would have been. But the hole in the air collapsed with a thundering boom as more of the demons crawled out. The thrashing torso of a demon cut in half flopped on the ground in front of us. I gave it a running kick and sent it spiraling to the other end of the alley. The pale wolf tore into it, confirming its death. I screamed as a demon rushed toward me. Goliath was occupied with another. I ripped the decorations from the cross and brandished it before me. The creature didn't stop. Clearly the cross's religious batteries weren't working. I hauled back and slammed the decently heavy metal object in the ugly face with shriveled orange eyes. There was a scream and a hiss. The air filled with the smell of burning rancid meat. The scream came from the demon's throat. The hiss was the burning of its flesh as I pressed the cross into its face. It looked like it was charged, but it required contact to work. With another scream and a torrent of cuss words I spun, and mule kicked the thing in the chest. Vlad caught it like I passed him a dance partner, only instead of taking the demon for a spin, he pulled its arms from its torso. The blood splatter was weird in that I didn't register that I was getting covered in blood and gore. It was thick and oozy black, not red, not flowing. Knowing how my cross worked, I turned to help Goliath, who was taking on two of the demons. I pressed the crucifix into the closest piece of exposed demon I could find. I switched hands and reached into my jacket, pulled one of the sharpened stake props from my bandolier and stabbed down with all my might into the thing's neck. Goliath ripped the head off the other one, and then did the same to the demon I had distracted. "Arg!" he screamed as he spun around looking for more creatures to fight. There were none. They were all dead and in pieces, scattered on the ground around each of us, piled high in a grisly collection of parts that had once belonged to a demon horde. I looked at the others. I was the only one sucking in large gulps of air from adrenaline and exertion. Nerves ricocheted around my core, and I was suddenly extremely turned on. The wolf began nosing at a pile in front of him, and then he pivoted, hiked up a leg and peed on it. "Very well done indeed," Vlad laughed as he straightened his tie and jacket. He barely looked mussed except for the gore splattered across his face. The black-on-black suit hid the rest. Goliath turned to me, somehow that wolf mask smiled again. "You are so sexy." "I am so hot for you right now," I said. "I'd kiss you if you had lips." I gestured at his face. He placed his hand on his collarbone, at the base of his neck, and began running his hand up his neck. Fur and all, that was a sexy neck. I had a thing for Adam's apples. As his hand moved up, I expected him to push the mask back over his head. That was the motion. That is not what happened. As his hand passed over his face, the air around him vibrated. The mask was gone, not in a quick sleight of hand fashion, but gone. Actually, all the fursona elements were gone. The fur bodysuit, the clawed hands, all of it gone. Oh! It was a miracle. I could form a single syllable. The haughty anime man had nothing on the K-pop quality god that stood before me. His smolder did not say wholesome and cute, it said sexy hot. He still had those intense amber eyes as he did in the costume. And now he had lips, pouty and kissable, and twitched up in a sexy smirk. "Hi," I managed a second syllable. "Hi," he chuckled back at me as his lips descended to mine. Stunned as I was not exactly capable of kissing. So I let him do all the work. He did it well. His lips were soft and warm. His technique was masterful, with soft seeking presses, playful bites, and my brain stopped as his tongue took over. I struggled with the timing of my breathing. This was overwhelming. Goliath was comfort and need, but the back of my brain struggled to process everything that had just happened. "You okay?" he asked, pulling back from the kiss. "Champ, it looks like you suck at kissing." Vlad slapped him on the shoulder. "Asshole, can't you see I've rendered her completely breathless?" I had a hard time focusing, not just on the closeness of their faces, but in general. My brain wanted to scream, but it didn't exactly know why. I mean, logic said Goliath protected me, he's a great kisser, and I wasn't paying attention to how his costume came off. Logic said of course, creepy crawling demonic mummy things emerged from a hole of boiling clouds in the air over our heads. Of course we just kicked ass and the bodies around us were shriveling up further into desiccated dust. Of course. I blinked at Vlad as he reached for my cross. "It's not blessed." He pulled his hand back with a hiss. "But it is silver." "Well played, Gloria." He didn't seem bothered that Goliath and I had just been swapping spit, and were still wrapped around each other. Not unlike how Furboy had been earlier at the club, when it was me wrapped around Vlad. That explains how the demon jumped locations. I jumped out of Goliath's embrace. I hadn't noticed when Biker joined us. He sauntered up pulling a long-sleeved t-shirt on over his head. Where had he been? And when had he changed out of his furry gear? And where was the wolf? Huh. I was 100% incapable of functioning at full mental capacity. Biker, and it totally was him, same voice, same coloring as his wolf costume. That's an odd consistency to have. Wouldn't the costume be the color the fur bodysuit material came in and not match the hair on his head? Same general physique. Where Goliath had muscles to spare, he was overall narrower. Biker was broad. His muscles had muscles. He jabbed a thumb up at the space where the demons had emerged. "Portals. We've got demon portals. And I'm afraid your friend is with a lesser prince temporal demon." I did my best imitation of a goldfish. Blink blink blink. "Oh what?" He means a kung fu master level demon. Boss demon, Goliath tried to explain. I'm sorry, but your friend is in grave peril if we don't find her, Vlad said. Would she have given him her name? Biker asked. I shrugged. I don't know. I mean, she probably told him her name was Vin. That's what she tells most people. She wouldn't know not to give him her true name, Goliath added. But she wouldn't have. When you say true name, you mean birth name, not a nickname or a shortened variation, right? What are you getting at, dear? The way words rolled off of Vlad's tongue made me go weak in the knees. Vin's name isn't Vin. Before I could continue, a warm human hand covered my mouth. I looked up into Goliath's eyes. I gave him a nod of understanding. Don't say her name out loud. And you know he's a demon, how? I asked. The three men, and they were all men now, furry costumes were gone, fake fangs gone, cast glances at each other. Vlad straightened up and cleared his throat. It's a good night to track demons. I stared at him, my eyebrows lifted. I needed much more information than that. I turned my head to Biker, and looked to him for more of an explanation. He shrugged. So you're a demon hunter, I pointed at Vlad, who likes to dress up like a billionaire vampire for Halloween. I wiggled my finger back and forth between Biker and Goliath. And your boy band decided to go out in expensive furry costumes, but Posh decided to follow after the smokin' hot anime guy. Why? To pick up any cast-offs from all the women? You're halfway there, darlin', Biker said. Look, we gotta get across town. Do you have a car? I'll explain on the way. Vlad extended a hand to me. You're right. I can walk, I sneered. He huffed and looked at my shoes. We don't have time. I squeaked. As Vlad was telling me to get on his back, Biker lifted me into position. I guess I didn't have a say in the matter. Chapter 4. Flashbang wow. I'll drive, Biker said. I popped open the trunk before tossing him the keys. I kicked my heels off and grabbed a pair of tennis shoes I had for later, when my feet got tired. Goliath had already climbed into the back seat Vlad was wedging himself into. Spare clothes? Vin's decoy costume, I announced as I slid into the front passenger seat and scooted the seat as far forward as I could. Why did they put a back seat in this thing if they weren't going to make it large enough for people to sit? Vlad complained. Biker swung my little car in a large U-turn and zoomed off toward the far side of the city. Okay guys, spill. What's going on here? Where did you stash those costumes? Why are you so obsessed over our costumes? Goliath asked. Not costumes, Biker grumbled. Okay, not costumes for Sona wear. I'm concerned because I have friends into cosplay. I know those things are not cheap to make and yours are really high quality. The animatronics in the face masks alone had to cost you hundreds if not thousands easily. Not costumes, Biker repeated himself. Whatever. I turned back to face front and flopped into my seat. You don't want to talk about the costumes, fine. Would one of you maybe like to explain what those things were back there, and what's a lesser prince tempura demon? Temporal, Biker laughed, temporal. He's a demon who can shift through time and space. That portal back there was sloppy on his account. Basically, he hadn't closed the door after himself. And it's All Hallows Eve. Demons like to come out and play. This one is an incubus, and collecting women. Wait, incubus, I know that term. That just means he's out for sex, right? Not this one, darling. This one is more powerful than a random horny minor demon. This one will devour his mates in the end, consuming them until they rend their own flesh with maddened need for him. That's why he was so pretty, I practically whispered. Pretty? That's what does it for you? Oh there, Goliath, that sounds like you're jealous, Biker laughed. I'm not jealous of some freak with long hair. I turned to see him cross his arms and huddle into himself. So anime guy is a demon, and he lured Vin into his web. Why didn't he get me? I mean, I thought he was hot too. That would be my doing. I didn't make contact with your friend, but I caught you, Vlad explained. The eye thing? Yes. I compelled you to not want to look at other men, thus protecting you from the incubus. Thus keeping her for yourself. Pretty selfish move there, Vlad. I thought you were there tracking the incubus, not out to seduce one of your own. Vlad cleared his throat. I was tracking Urdu. That's why I was in the club. As far as seducing my own conquest, why not multitask? You must admit our dear Gloria here is worth seducing. You were enthralling her, Goliath practically growled. Enthrall, seduce. Semantics. Besides, you did a fine job of keeping her from succumbing. Wait, hold up. Vlad, you were making me like you? I mean, I really like you. That much attraction is already there. I was keeping your attention on me. The fact that you wanted to give it to me made everything so much easier, Vlad chuckled. Biker swung the car around a tight corner, and I slid into him. My hand missed his leg, and I accidentally pressed against his crotch trying to right myself. I looked into his eyes. There was a substantial amount of crotch under my hand. Maybe I should have called you Goliath. He gave me a wink and a smile, and helped me back into my side of the car. Are you moving in on my woman? Goliath complained. I turned on him. Look, dude, you are hot, but I am not your woman. I'm my own woman. But Vlad, nothing. And you, nothing. Right now we should be focused on finding your buddy Posh and my friend before some demon does something unspeakable to her. Urdu, his name is Urdu. And you are going to want to use his full name, Urdu Lily Demon of Samaria, Biker started. That will compel him to listen to you. You can interrupt him, grab his attention, Vlad continued. Can I make him do what I want? I asked. No, but you can burn him with that cross, Goliath said. The cross didn't seem to do much, I complained. This demon isn't Christian, and that cross isn't blessed. But it is silver, and supernaturals don't like silver, Vlad said. I toyed with the cross. Is that why you don't like it? I asked Vlad. He gave me a sharp nod. What about you? I asked just as I placed the cool metal against the exposed skin on Biker's forearm. The car swerved and he clamped his other hand over the spot I touched. What did you do that for? Oh, like that hurt you, I snarked in reply. Biker lifted his hand, and underneath I could see the angry red skin and blisters forming. No, I started. No. This isn't happening. This wasn't real. The silver on that cross did not just burn the man driving my car like a bat out of hell across town to who knows where, and I was willingly going along for the ride. Stop the car. I need to get out. He glared at me and kept driving. Stop the car, I screamed and began beating my feet and hands against the car, thrashing as if I could make him stop. The tires squealed, and I could smell the burn of rubber as he stopped in the middle of the street. I scrambled to undo my belt and open the door. I fell out of the car and was on my feet and running. I knew enough back in the club to not take a drink I hadn't seen prepared myself, but oh God, there were two of them. What if they had distracted me? The demons were just a hallucination. I had gone with them to one location, and I was willingly going to a second. How stupid was I? Never let them get you to a second location. Oh crap, I was gonna die. One of their friends had Vin. I would never see her again. She would never meet some nice man her parents approved of. I didn't want to be killed on Halloween. What a stupid cliché mistake that would be. I tripped and fell, rolling myself into a ball of pain. My knee hurt, and I had ripped my yoga pants. I blew on the palms of my hands that had gotten pretty scratched up. Tears stung my eyes, and I felt the buildup of snot fighting my nose's ability to breathe. Gloria, Goliath's soft voice was in my ear. I felt his arms wrap around me in an attempt to be soothing. They were warm, but I took no comfort from them. Go away, you're just setting me up for something very bad. Why don't you do whatever it is right here, and get it over with? I don't want to be scared. I sniffed. His lips were soft and pliant on mine. His tongue did a little twirl thing, and I stretched my arms out and around his neck. How could someone who wanted to hurt me be such a good kisser? Maybe if I let him distract me with his lips, I wouldn't notice the bad things so much when they happened. No one wants to hurt you. Quite the opposite, dear. We want to protect you. Vlad's voice cut through the fog that Goliath's lips generated. Goliath stopped kissing me. Biker wants to show you something. With a finger under my chin, he guided my head up to look at the large man who stood over us. Biker posed with his arms to the side, palms up. Once he saw that I was watching, he crossed his arms, and for lack of a better description, he folded in on himself. The air did that shimmering thing it had when Goliath took his costume off. Only now Biker didn't take his clothes off, he changed them, and he now wore a wolf. He was a wolf, but the way the shift happened, it was more like putting on a sweatshirt. Vlad knelt down next to where Goliath held me. You have handled tonight with such grace and aplomb. A little reality check and self-preservation was not uncalled for. Maybe we could have handled our explanation better. Biker, Goliath and their friend Posh are all werewolves, and I am in fact a vampire. But not a billionaire. Those are the truly reprehensible monsters in the world. Why hoard such wealth when they could easily make the world better for so many people, and never feel the loss financially? I gulped, and looked from the blonde wolf in front of me to the smart-ass vampire next to me. Are you at least rich? He answered me with a hearty laugh. Should I pet you? I asked Biker. The wolf wagged its tail, and twisted up and back into the man. He had started out dressed, but now he was naked. That's an invitation I will gladly take you up on. I don't know where the clothes came from, but Biker was suddenly pulling on a pair of jeans, and the shirt he had on earlier. Right now my head needed to wrap itself around werewolves and vampires and demons. I would deal with disappearing clothes, being available when needed at a later date and time. I looked at Vlad. You're really a vampire? He nodded. You're really a werewolf? I asked Goliath. That's what Biker meant when he said not a costume? He nodded. Not a costume, just a controlled shift. Biker reached out a hand. I took it and let him pull me up to my feet. I'm sorry I burned you. It was a mistake, you had no reason to think that's what was going to happen. Are you okay? He looked deep into my eyes. Maybe not, but I will be. His kiss was hot and full of passionate promises, and completely unexpected. I melted into him, and kissed him back with as much enthusiasm as I could manage with my fried brain. Better? He asked. I nodded. He turned and headed back to the car. Goliath wrapped an arm around my shoulder and walked me back. Hey, about that kiss. I started. Which one? Goliath asked. There's been a bit of that going on. Me, you. You, him. You and the vampire. I swallowed a hard, invisible lump. I'm not usually so scattered. It must be the adrenaline, and all this running after Vin and that Urdu lily. I just don't want you to think that I'm a tease or something. Nobody thinks that, Gloria. Don't worry about it. We have other things to focus on right now. He climbed into the crowded back seat and let me take shotgun again. My little car had some vim and vigor to it, but I never knew it could perform like it was designed for high-speed chases. Biker maneuvered through streets I didn't recognize, and I sat there thinking entirely too much. I was on a demon hunting expedition with werewolves and a vampire. And they were all distractingly smoking hot, and they all seemed to like me. Why me? I asked. Why you what? Why did you stop me from being entranced by the demon? Why are you helping me find Vin? I can answer the first question, Vlad began. You were the first one I could make eye contact with. The extra level enthrall was originally unintentional. I was looking into a lot of eyes when I first entered the club. Okay, but what about you guys? You danced with me, you bought me a drink. You were already flirting with us. And don't try to deny it. When we saw you were enthralled, it was simple enough to up the flirt and take action. And if you remember correctly, you asked us for help finding your friend. It's just a coincidence that a nasty incubus is involved. Okay, I said, uncertain where I wanted this to go. But I still like you. That's on me, no compulsion, right? Vlad's the only one who had a compulsion on you, and you managed to break that. If you still like him, that's all you, Biker said. And the weird mixed-up signals I'm getting and feeling about you and Goliath? That's also on you. But Gloria, there are no mixed signals here, Goliath answered. But I like all of you, and I can't decide. I pouted. The car stopped suddenly. Biker cupped my chin, so I was forced to meet his gaze. No one is asking you to choose anything right now, except maybe your weapon. We can discuss the who likes whom part of this later. Let's go get your friend. He gave me a quick kiss and jumped from the car. Goliath leaned into the front half of the car, and also kissed me before pushing the seat up and climbing out of the back seat. You know you don't have to choose if you don't want to. I know how to share. This time I exited the car with a bit more finesse, landing on my feet and ready to fight. Vlad didn't have as dignified an exit as I had managed. He stood and adjusted his suit. Pretend you didn't see that. I stifled a giggle. The wolf's right. When you choose, sharing is an option. He was off running after Biker and Goliath before I had time to come up with a witty retort, or ask why he hadn't kissed me too. Locating the demon was surprisingly easy this time. Just run down the alley with the weird otherworldly glowing green smoke. I rounded the corner and the scene before me was bad. Monster movie bad. How do I describe what I saw? The sexy anime demon had grown larger than life. He had been tall before, but now he was a giant, easily 10 to 12 feet tall. The fancy robes he had worn earlier were shredded. The ass-length long hair now only came to just below his shoulders. And why yes, he was a sex demon. I may have seen a penis that big on a hippo at the zoo. He held Vin King Kong fashion in his grasp. She kicked and struggled and screamed for all she was worth. On the ground at his feet were the other girls. I counted 7 on the ground. 2 were oddly silent and limp. I didn't want to think about that. The rest were in divided groups, huddled together and crying. I didn't blame them. In the air over his head, the same boiling clouds and purple lightning, opening some sort of temporal rift. The whole roared like a thundering train. The mummy-like demons from earlier slowly crawled out, as if they were afraid of getting caught by the sex demon. On the far side of the alley from where I was stood a large black snarling wolf, Posh. Biker, back in wolf form, was circling around. I caught a glimpse of a man, dragging the crying women away from the demon. My initial thought was that he was poaching the victims for his own nefarious purposes, until I watched. He dragged them back and then picked them up, or helped them to walk under their own power. Once a good way down, he set them down, helped them sit and talk to them, looking them over for any serious injuries. The glowing green smoke swirling around the demon's legs made it hard to focus on details. I couldn't figure why he wasn't heading down and around the block. I kept him in my peripheral vision. If there was a way to get around the demon without being clotheslined by his erection, I wanted to help get the women out of there and someplace safe. A demon arm sailed past my vision as Vlad shredded one of the mummified things. Posh and Biker alternated between going after Urdu Lily and the lesser demons. Armed with a silver cross and some pointy sticks, I entered the fray. Goliath was actually climbing the demon like a tree, and not in some sexy hot metaphor. Urdu plucked him off his hip and tossed him. Goliath! I cried as I watched him crumple. I didn't need to be concerned, he went limp and then rolled, and landed on all 4 of his wolf paws before bolting back into the fight. More of the creepy mummy demons crawled out of the gate, and Urdu seemed to be getting bigger. How do we close the portal? I yelled. What is that thing? The guy helping the women pointed up and asked me. Demon portal. Halloween crap gone wrong, I yelled back. Are they okay? He looked over his shoulder to where the women were safely distanced from the action. They are a bit banged up. The alley is closed off at the other end. We need to get them out of there, and to the hospital. We need to take care of this thing first, I said, pointing up. Light, energy, and explosion would be good, Vlad answered me. Great, where was I supposed to get a bomb? We need fireworks, the guy said. He ran behind Urdu, and we could finally talk without yelling across all the fighting and snarling. It's Halloween, not the 4th of July. Where the hell are we going to find fireworks? I was able to focus on him. I couldn't decide if he was in costume or not. Either way, he was dressed in expensive stonewashed jeans, with a bright purple silk shirt open to the navel showing off nice manscaped pecs. His ink-black hair was unruly, but I attributed that to our situation. His mustache was a bit extra with the ends twirled up. He wore heavy dark eyeliner and sizable gold hoops in his ears. He was either dressed as a Bollywood hero, or he was a Bollywood doucheboy wannabe. Either way, Vin totally needed to meet this guy. He was completely her type. And if he was single, he would also be her mother's type, for setting Vin up with. I know where I can get fireworks, he said. Run! I yelled. I don't think we have much time. He took off out of the alley. I really hoped that was not the last we would see of him. I spent the next 10 minutes distracting the demons I could with silver burns and my pokey sticks. I had been right. The creepy-ass demons crawling out of the portal did move in a swarm fashion. It did not make me happy to be right. I found some fireworks, Bollywood announced as he returned. I ran over to him. These are great. Any rockets? Mostly flashbangs. How's your throwing arm? He asked. I throw like a girl, I announced. Bollywood looked at me a bit disappointed. Fast pitch softball, I've got this. He cracked a smile. Good. Let's blow this sucker up. How many do we have? I started laying them out, in a row. Not so many that your pitches can go wide. So no curveballs, yeah? I stood up and started rotating my shoulder. I hadn't played fast pitch since the 10th grade. That was almost 10 years ago. But I had technique, and I was counting on muscle memory. Let's do this. I extended my hand, and Bollywood put a lit firework in my palm. If I timed this wrong, I could lose some fingers. If I didn't try, I could lose Vin. Fingers were worth saving a best friend over. My first pitch was too low. But the flashbang went off near Urdu Lily's head, distracting the demon. He almost dropped Vin. He needed to let her go. I didn't want him to climb into the portal with her. You missed. Vlad had time to provide a little obvious commentary. Yes, dear, I'll try to do better on the next one. Do please, this is getting rather tedious, and I'm getting tired of dodging that appendage. I laughed and wound up for another go at the portal. Missed again, but I was closer. I needed more spin up, and I needed height. I need to get higher. Goliath rolled in front of me from a blow. Goliath, can you get me onto the demon? He shifted back, naked. He was distracting, but I kept my focus on the job at hand, and his eyes. What do you need? He asked. I need to get higher, and if I can be under the portal, like right where he is, I know I can land the shot. I turned to Bollywood. Once he gets me up there, you toss me the firework. We won't have much time. So don't light it until the very last second. He gave me a sharp nod. Ready? Goliath asked. I nodded, and then I was lifted and pushed up into the night. I wrapped one hand around the demon's torso and braced my footing. Now. Bollywood tossed the firework, and I heaved it skyward with a wind-up. The flashbang went off, and the portal collapsed with a thunderous crash. The demon looked up and added his own roar to the noise. Urdu Lily, demon of Samaria. I screamed as I stomped on him. He paused at the sound of his name. It had worked. Take that. I slammed the silver cross into his face and pressed hard. Both of his hands reached for the burning piece of metal. Vin screamed as she fell. Bollywood had Vin in his arms by the time I reached her. Vin, are you okay? I reached for her, but she had her eyes on Bollywood. You saved me. I knew he was totally her type. Get her out of here. I pointed down the alley, where the rest of the women were. It was the safest place I could think of. Bollywood lifted her as if she weighed nothing. With her safe, I returned my attention to my guys and the demon. Urdu was on his knees, still clutching at his face. The cross seemed to have sunk in the flesh. It was such a shame to ruin such a pretty face. Then again, it wasn't pretty, was it? It belonged to a demon that was going to consume my friend. All around us, the lesser demons crumbled into dust. It was time for this one to turn to dust. Urdu was shrinking in size. Surrounded by 3 wolves and a vampire and 1 pissed-off best friend, he should have been defeated. Instead, he started laughing. That deep, maniacal, evil genius laugh. My insides twisted uncomfortably. What if he had a clever escape plan, all ready to? There was a loud crack and sound of rending meat. Urdu Lily fell forward, face down on the pavement. Vlad stood behind where the demon had been, brushing his hands together. Well done, that's taken care of. I blinked a few times. It was over. The demon was already crumpling before my eyes. We're not quite done, we have those women to take care of. The man who spoke could only be Posh. I'll handle that, Vlad responded. Hey. I made him look over at me. You gonna do that eye thing? Something like that. Can you make it so Vin remembers that guy? Are you seriously trying to set your friend up with the fireworks guy? Goliath asked as he shifted back to human. I nodded. It's a professional-grade hobby. Find a man she'll like that her parents will also like. I'll do my best, Vlad said with a chuckle. He straightened his jacket and tie and headed down the alley. Chapter 5. The After Party. Turns out Bollywood owned an SUV. And it was a good thing too, because I could barely fit 4 adults into my car, and we now had 10 more people to transport. His SUV comfortably sat 8, so cramming in 10 just meant they had to be stacked on top of each other. I did not fail to notice the men, all elected to go in the SUV. Goliath whined something about legroom. I wasn't surprised that Vin chose to ride with Bollywood too. Truth be told, it kind of hurt my feelings. Vlad said we could all go to his house for a little after party and clean up. I didn't know how his compulsion worked. My best guess is, it was some kind of heavy-duty power of suggestion. Also, I was going to need to work on his concept of house. I clearly grew up in a hovel, if his mansion was what he called a house. And if he wasn't some kind of billionaire, he was close. His house was the size of some high schools I've seen. Vlad led us through a side door. We were a ragtag group. Of the victims, the more injured women were carried in. I helped one limp in, her arm around my shoulder. I was pleased that Bollywood carried Vin. I hoped for her sake he was the perfect future son-in-law for her mother. The large kitchen lounge-type mega room had plenty of seating, so everyone could be comfortable. I shuffled over to the kitchen side and filled the tea kettle I found on the stove with water. Goliath joined me and started looking through cupboards. He found a perfectly matching set of teacups and saucers and placed them on the counter. The stove clicked a few times, as if the pilot wasn't used to lighting the flame for the burner. Vlad placed a large Taj Mahal-looking tin on the counter. He opened it and took a sniff of the contents. He nodded, before returning to where the rest of the group draped over furniture. He and Biker exchanged a few words and then he left. I watched him go, and then turned my attention back to Biker. He and Posh were examining a few of the women, looking at cuts and scrapes. Biker looked into the eyes of one of the victims I had seen unconscious earlier. I was glad she was upright, but she probably had a doozy of a concussion. The water boiled for our first round of tea before Vlad returned. He carried an assortment of decidedly vintage medical supplies. These came with the house, he announced as he spilled his armload onto the table. I guess we should be glad you have anything at all, I muttered. If he was a vampire, he would have no need for human things, like 20-piece matched serving sets or tea. The caretaker keeps a few items here, like the tea. But the rest of this has been here for years. He waved his hand about, indicating everything. Goliath and I prepared hot tea for everyone, including Vlad. I didn't want to leave any hints that he might be something other to the rest of the group. Vlad helped us to serve. As he handed over each cup, he caught the woman's gaze and held it for a very long moment. I know he had done something similar back at the alley, but this time I was able to witness him working. Everyone was very quiet, settling in. He repeated his actions with Vin, and I could tell she was getting ready to pass out. I had been best friends with her since college, and had become familiar with how she was after a late night of studying, or just hanging out with me. He did his eye lock thing one last time with Bollywood, and with him, I noticed a change in his demeanor. Previously he held Vin on his lap, but now he let her sit on her own. He stayed right next to her, still protective but not so much in her space. Yawns spread through the group. "Why don't we adjourn to the salon?" Vlad said with a gesture indicating to everyone it was time to get up and move. I had never been in a house with a salon. I knew he didn't mean a place to get a haircut. I tried to remember from movies and shows that had mansions, and I couldn't remember a salon. A Batcave, sure, an indoor pool, yeah, a library to marry a beast over, definitely, but not a salon. We followed him through a tall ceilinged hall, and large heavy wood double doors into a space that was part library, worth marrying a beast over, and super comfy living room. The decor was straight out of 1001 Arabian Nights, with low heavily cushioned couches and swaths of draped tent-like silk. Things were old and slightly dusty. Vlad had mentioned a caretaker, so I'd guess it was safe to say the room had been dusted and vacuumed, if not in this decade, at least this century. The women lowered themselves onto settees and couches with audible sighs of relief, and the low moans of pleasure that come with climbing into bed after a long and tedious day. The damage to everyone's clothes stood out in stark contrast to the elegance and style of the room. "Do you have anything we can let these ladies change into?" Posh asked. Vlad harumphed. "Possibly. Gloria dear, would you mind assisting?" With a nod I followed him through the big doors, and down the hall opposite of the kitchen. The hall opened onto the formal entrance of the mansion. It was spectacular. Large enough to hold a ball, and this was just what you got when you walked in the front door. Black and white marble tiled flooring, gilded accents, a chandelier the Phantom of the Opera would be envious of. "I think my entire apartment building fits in this room alone," I said as I took it all in with my mouth wide open. "It's nice enough, but I've seen grander. I doubt my father would have ever considered a home so small for one of his mistresses. And he had several. Houses or mistresses?" I asked. "Both." I followed him up the stairs. The staircase was the kind that brides went bonkers over. "So you would consider this downsizing?" He laughed. "We had very different childhoods," I said. The words trailed out of my mouth as he led me into a bedroom. Not his. The air had that lack of regular use mustiness to it. Everything was gorgeous: four-poster bed, coordinating dressers, a fireplace. "I believe a dressing room is through this way." We passed through the room, and into what I had at first expected to be a closet, but was in fact another small room pretending to be a closet. Vlad reached up and removed white sheeting from over the hung garments. Everything was pristine and vintage, to mid-20th century and older. "Vlad, how long have you owned this place?" I sorted through and found a section of long-sleeve nightgowns. I started to pull them from the hangers. "Maybe 70 years or so. I've spent the last 20 years on the continent, and haven't had a chance to air everything out. These should work." I hefted an armful of garments. I continued to talk about how stunning everything was as he led me back to the salon. "You could live here," he said. I opened my mouth a few times, words failed to fall out. "You have said more than once your apartment is small. There is plenty of space here. You could have your choice of bedrooms." "I don't think I could afford the rent." He stopped on the stairs and turned around to look at me. "I don't recall saying anything about rent." "Oh," was all I managed. He took the clothing from me, stepped down the last stair, and left me standing like some idiot in the middle of his grand stairway. By the time I reached the salon, a few of the women were already asleep. One had a nightgown on over herself like a tent, and was changing underneath. I recognized the arm jutting in and out as the contortions of removing a bra from under clothing. One woman had moved off to a corner, and turned her back to everyone to change. "Where's Vin?" I asked, noticing she was missing. "She went to change," another woman answered. She came back in a few moments later, her costume in her arms. She placed her things on the empty couch behind an already sleeping Bollywood. The long nightgown covered her from neck to ankle. "Thank you," she said to Vlad. "It's like what I have at home. Very comfortable." I looked around, noticing all the nighties were gone. I guess I should have grabbed one for me. I looked down at myself and groaned. I was splattered in demon gore. "Is there a shower I could use?" I asked. "Of course," Vlad answered. "The plumbing in this place works?" Biker sneered his question. "Everything is so old." "Everything is antique," Vlad corrected. "And the plumbing was updated while I was away. I've been assured it's the highest standards." With a tired eye roll, I looked at Vlad. "Shower." If I had any more energy, I would have whined, but I barely had the energy to form words. The adrenaline rush of battle no longer sustained me. I followed Vlad and the werewolves followed me. It was weird to think these men could shift in and out of wolf form, and that when I met them they weren't in some extremely good costumes, but were actually artfully half-shifted. It was weird to think about anything from tonight. Hottie anime guy turned out to be a demon. I met a legit vampire. I got kissed by a bunch of handsome men, and for some reason all of them still seemed to be interested. I never had my pick before. If I was lucky enough to have multiple suitors at a party, they tended to weed themselves out, and I ended up with one of them. Or none. None sucked. Usually, the one I ended up with sucked too. I hoped I would choose wisely tonight. Vlad's caretaker had exceptional taste, and was clearly not afraid to spend money. The remodel on the bathroom he led us to was less than 10 years old. Based on the size of the room, I felt safe in thinking they had converted one of the many bedrooms into a full bathing suite. First off, all 5 of us fit in the room, which in itself was impressive. "Pretty sweet digs for someone who lives alone," Biker scoffed. "I do have guests, as your presence indicates. And the caretaker has been living here." "Where is your caretaker?" I asked. It seemed as if this mysterious person would have appeared like an all-knowing butler when we arrived. "Oh, I gave him and his family a vacation. I believe they are in Florence, or is it Istanbul by now? I've only been back for a few weeks, and they've been so accommodating. But I felt with Halloween approaching, it would be best if they weren't around. For their own safety." The tub could easily fit 3. That made up my mind. No shower tonight. Bath. I sat on the edge and began taking off my shoes. My feet were tired. The rest of me was thinking about aching. The pain would be with me in the morning. I was glad that I had brought a backup pair of shoes. Fighting a demon in heels would have been an absolute nightmare. "Towels?" I asked. Vlad slid aside a door that looked like marble tile, and exposed shelves full of fluffy towels and a variety of soaps. "Oh." I was on my feet, and shopping for the wonderfully scented things I wanted in my bath. When I turned around, Goliath was already down to nothing, and suited his name. Posh was kicking off his loafers and unbuckling his belt, and Biker was rolling up his shirt. Confused, I looked at Vlad, expecting him to provide some logical explanation as to why everyone was stripping down for my bath. What I saw was his naked backside turning the taps in the shower. I stared. The shower was large, with multi-directional shower heads and a waterfall head, but it was not set up like a locker room. Guys. What's going on here?" I asked. "We're taking a shower," Biker said. "That is why we are in here," Posh explained like I was a child. "That's why I'm in here. You're in here for the tour." And I'm about to kick you out so I can take a bath. We won't all fit in the tub, so shower, Goliath said. We're taking a shower. We're all taking a shower, Posh said, smooth as silk. He was living up to the name, smooth dresser, smoother talker. Wouldn't you like that? My jaw dropped, and I struggled to breathe as he stepped behind me and skimmed the jacket from my shoulders. Lips, probably his, trailed down my neck to my shoulder. Is that okay with you? Posh asked. My stomach was on a roller coaster ride, with all the thrilling dips and curves. I tried to laugh. I thought you'd make me choose, or all bow out. Why on earth would we do that, darlin'? Biker had my arm, and placed kisses on the inside of my wrist. I gulped. Because, isn't that how it usually works? It was hard to focus surrounded by them. Dearest, Vlad's voice purred in my ear. This is a seduction. If you hadn't noticed, we work well together. Why should we change that just because we are no longer in battle? What if I don't want to be seduced? The touching stopped. I much preferred the touching. And if I do? Chapter 6. The After Party's After Party. Well, I think it was Goliath who asked, do you want to be seduced or not? I think that would be a very nice way to end the evening I've had. You aren't going to make me choose, right? Not at all. Then yes, please. A while later, my bladder demanded I wake up and tend to its condition. I extricated myself from the men and padded off to the bathroom. Last night I couldn't have said how I got from point A to point B, but this morning I clearly remembered where to go. I found a fluffy robe and wrapped up in it. I wasn't ready to go back to sleep. The memories of last night ricocheted around in my head. It was all almost too much. Had I actually fought a demon? Had I really banged 4 men at once? I suddenly needed to check on Vin. Had we saved her? I scurried down the hall and down the grand stairs. My bare feet slapped against the cold marble tiles of the entrance. I was greeted with a chorus of soft snores. Vin's couch was empty, but she was on the floor in the arms of Bollywood. I smiled and padded off to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. This is where you snuck off to, Posh said as he came into the kitchen. I leaned against the counter and sipped my freshly made hot tea. I got a good, long look at him. We had barely said anything to each other before he was part of the grand seduction. I stared at him as he stood before me in black shorts. A trail of dark hairs reached up from his shorts and stopped at his belly button. The hairs picked up the trail again at his ribs, before spreading over powerful pecs. His jaw was delightfully square and this morning, covered in dark stubble. He had sparkling hazel eyes, and a hint of a hook on his large nose. His dark hair was a mess. Enjoying the view, he asked as he stepped closer. Very much, I confessed. Tea? I asked. He took the tea from my hands and placed it on the counter. I was thinking more of you, he said as he untied the belt of the robe and pressed against me. It's after dawn, can we start using real names yet? I mean the new day comes with dawn, right? Not some man-made number on a clock somewhere. So this is a new day. Yes it is, Posh said as he helped me back on with my robe. My name's Alex. Alexander, but the diminutive is fine. Do you know Vlad's name? You two seemed to be particularly friendly last night. Vlad, Alex chuckled. We were all particularly friendly last night. Yes, I've known Sebastian for a while. Sebastian. That's a good name for a vampire. It is. He smiled at me, and the tingles he had given me moments before surged back to life. He helped me from the table, and I made a mental note to disinfect it before breakfast. I snuggled in against his chest, and he wrapped an arm around me. You seem, how to say this without being rude? Older than Goliath and Biker. It has a lot to do with your choice of words and speech patterns. The same way Sebastian talks in a more formal fashion. Werewolves live a long time if they survive. Survive? I interrupted. Survive, yes. We have natural enemies, hunters mistake us for real wolves, and supernatural foe like Urdu Lily. We can live long, not as long as vampires. But yes, I am older. He led me to a different set of stairs. Either he had been here before, or he was exploring. How old is older? I asked. Old enough to know the last time the salon was redecorated, it was the 1920s before the stock market crash. Some of the first aid supplies Sebastian had found dated back to the 1950s, and he had said they were from the previous owners. So either Alex had been in this mansion before under the previous owners, or he knew something about the history of style. I shrugged. I didn't need to puzzle it out right now. What's Biker's name? I asked. Clifton. Cliff. He was born in the 60s, from Texas. Goliath is our youngest and closest to your age. His name is Jin Ho, but he typically just goes by Jin. He guided me down a hallway, and then things began to look familiar. We turned into the big bedroom, where the other two were still asleep. In our absence they had spooned together, with Cliff wrapped protectively around Jin. Are you planning on telling me your name? Alex asked as he took my robe, and settled me back into bed. Jin made some harumph noises, shifted and pulled me in against him. Alex followed me into bed, and let me wrap my arms around him. I have an old-fashioned name. I almost think Gloria would be better. I'm old, I like old-fashioned names. Judith, I confessed. Judith, a powerful name. I like it. I fell back asleep wrapped up in men. Are you going to wake up, or are we staying in bed all day? Jin murmured in my ear sometime later. I rolled over to look at him. It was just the two of us still twisted up in the sheets now. Where's everyone? I asked. Breakfast. A delivery arrived about an hour ago. Vlad must have made arrangements at some point last night. You mean Sebastian, I said. So you know real names now? He smirked. It was a quirk of a half-smile that showed off his cheekbones and sensual lips. Yeah, Alex told me. I nodded. Since you seem to know everyone's name, I feel at a disadvantage here. Or do I keep calling you Gloria? How about, I wiggled in closer, running my leg up his, feeling his skin against mine, you do what you did so well last night and then I'll tell you my name. Big guy. He laughed and licked the air with his tongue. Right then it was spine-melting sexy. The rest of me melted when he did that thing to my body. After I lay panting and wrung out, he laughed at me some more. I suppose I should get up and go find some clothes, I whined, not wanting to put on anything from last night. Not wanting to get up and face the day. There was so much to be done. I had to get Vin home. I had to make sure she got a happily ever after with Bollywood. I had to go pack and start bringing my things over here. At some point in the night, I decided I would take Sebastian up on his offer and move in. I wasn't choosing him over anyone else. I was choosing the mansion. Jin, if I move in here, would you move in with me? He gave me that sexy smirk. Just me, or everyone? And what would Sebastian have to say about that? He's the one who gave me the idea. I sat up and rubbed at my face and head. I pretended that I looked all hot and sexy, and not like the hot mess I probably was. If your apartment is anything like your car, I think moving in here is a good plan. You're going to have a hard time getting rid of us. I smiled and sighed a happy sigh. I wasn't going to have to choose. Best option ever. I sighed again. Time to get up and face the world. I had things to do and hopefully no more demons to slay.
This has been Size Matters by Lulu M. Sylvian. Want more Halloween adventure romp? Check out Miss Chances. Keep listening for a sneak peek.
Miss Chances. Excerpt. When I came to, I was in the grand oversized four-poster bed that I dreamed about. I was not a graceful princess waking up. I floundered and fought pillows to sit up. My head spun a little when I finally achieved an upright position. It took a few moments for the spinning to stop. When I opened my eyes again, I saw that I had a bandage on my wrist. My neck felt weird. I reached up and found a bandage there as well. "Oh my darling," Gray said, "you're awake. Is this the after party?" I asked a little blearily. Gray chuckled. "No, darling. What's happened?" I couldn't remember anything after they saved me. I was certain that's what I remembered happening. Gustav got a little impatient and tried to have his own little private soiree with you. Soiree? Doesn't that mean a dinner party? I asked. You're not too far wrong. How are you feeling? Woozy, I said. He stepped in close and handed me a tall glass with an orange liquid in it. This will help you feel better. I looked at it rather dubiously before lifting my gaze to meet his eyes. It's simply orange juice, my dear. I nodded and took a sip. It felt cool and tangy. Fresh squeezed? Of course, only the best. I returned to the drink, restraining myself from chugging it down. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. You must rest, you've lost a lot of blood. Not enough to be of any concern, but enough for you to feel it. I thought I was making out with a man not donating blood. Gray turned and moved his head in one of those motions that tossed his long hair over his shoulder. It really was beautiful, and long. He looked like some kind of elf. An elven prince that dressed like a hot guy for a rave. Suddenly, I realized I could no longer hear the throbbing backbeat of the music. Where am I? We are in Rupert's private chambers. Private chambers? Like a private apartment within an exclusive country club? I wouldn't exactly call it that, Gray said. You are safe. That is all you need to worry about. All you need to be concerned with, Rupert said as he entered the room. Gustav? Gray asked. Handled, Rupert said in a clipped manner. Gray lifted an eyebrow and cocked his head to the side. Oh, Friedrich isn't going to like that. He's not going to like that at all. Friedrich can challenge me if he doesn't like how I handled the situation. Gustav trespassed where he was not wanted, was not invited. And he did not wait. I dealt with him. Rupert sounded deadly. His expression was grave. I swallowed around a dry spot in my throat. It was as if I hadn't had that orange juice recently, and was parched. What did you do to Gustav? I asked. Oh, my little lamb. Rupert was by my side, picking up my hand. He stroked delicately over the bandage and kissed it reverently. You need not worry about Gustav. He was a man who did not think the rules applied to him, and that there wouldn't be consequences to his actions. Consequences? Rupert reached up and stroked my brow, brushing the hair out of my face. You need not worry about him any longer. You are safe. He stood and crossed the room. I sat in the bed, quite comfortably surrounded by pillows and a thick comforter, and watched as the two men discussed what had happened. Rupert somehow looked disheveled. It wasn't as if his minimal amount of clothing was askew. His perfect hair was tangled. But mostly it was the smear of red across his chest and down his abs. I refused to think it was blood. He pulled his hair back from his face and began wrapping an elastic around, tying it up into a bun. It was like he knew that I swooned over men with their long hair up. He undid the fussy buckles and peeled the red sleeves off. I couldn't bring myself to calling it a jacket when it only covered his arms and shoulders. It was tight and hadn't hid the shape it covered. Somehow those muscles looked so much bigger in his skin. He looked down at his chest in disgust. Muttering something in that language I did not recognize, he exited through a different door. I could hear running water. And when he returned, he was drying off with a towel. He pulled items from drawers, including what turned out to be one of those Henley-style shirts. Its cream-colored fabric strained at his shoulder and arm muscles but hung loose to his hips. He skimmed the hip-hugger red leather pants off. I quickly looked at Gray, but not after getting a good look at Rupert's backside. Gray smirked, winking at me as we made eye contact. I felt the blush creep across my skin and clamped my eyes shut. I could not stop the color change. What are you doing? Gray asked. Changing. Don't ask stupid questions, Rupert grumbled. I'm done preening for the night. The tone of his voice changed. Willa. My lamb, are you pained? Are you still naked? I managed to squeak out. He let out a hearty laugh. No, my lamb, I am clothed. I opened my eyes. She was affronted by your nudity, Gray laughed behind him. I believe our dear Willa has never seen a nude man before. Rupert sat on the bed and reached for my hand. One pair of red leather pants replaced by a slightly darker pair, that I assumed stayed up around his waist instead of clinging desperately to his hips. Oh my God, the two of you. No. I have seen naked men before. It's rude to look at naked bits when one has not been invited to do so. I would have crossed my arms with indignation, except I was still holding the empty orange juice glass. Rupert kissed the back of the hand he held, and I sighed with resignation. I was stuck with these two. It wasn't exactly a hardship. With Rupert in practically normal clothes, he was even more handsome, and I could look at him. Before I had been embarrassed to look, I didn't know where to let my eyes rest. So much skin, and I wanted to ogle and be rude. But then he spoke to me, and I couldn't just look at him from the safe space of anonymity. You might want to change. Once Friedrich finds out, things will get messy. Gray gestured at his clothes. This hose is off, why do you think I chose it for tonight? He gave me a wicked grin, with a hint of sharp teeth exposed as he retrieved the empty glass from my hand and set it on a side table. Had I seen what I thought I had seen? Retrieving my hand from Rupert, I looked at the bandage on my wrist. The small smears of blood told me nothing. Had Gus somehow cut me? I could only remember his mouth on me. Then again, those memories felt very fuzzy. More like half-forgotten dreams than actual memories. I touched the bandage on my neck. What did Gus do to me? Gustav, Rupert dragged out the name like it tasted bad. And you do not need to worry about him anymore. I cut my glance from Rupert to Gray. He had stopped moving, his expression went stone cold. Dressed all in white with his long hair and pale skin, he could have been cut from marble. He was as still as a statue. Rupert on the other hand looked incredibly human, with blood coursing through his skin. His nostrils flared and his eyes flashed. They actually flashed. I flinched back. What was that? Rupert looked away. Sorry, my emotions. He glanced away, hiding his eyes from me. I reached forward to turn his face to me. No, my lamb, you should not see me this way. He caught my arm, stilling my movement. If I am your little lamb, as you keep calling me, then trust me. I don't know where the nerves of steel came from that allowed me to tell this man to trust me. I didn't know him, yet somehow. I shook that thought away. You're in trouble because of what happened with Gustav. Gustav did something to me. I'm involved now, I said with conviction. His eyes were closed as he turned his face to me. Rupert, you shouldn't, Gray said. He put her in danger, Rupert hissed. He was off the bed and confronting the other man. They were a sight, such opposites. Gray all slender and lithe, icy demeanor, cool pale. Rupert was fire in comparison. Both so beautiful, so sexy. What I wouldn't give for them to actually think of me as a little lamb, and their dear. Unfortunately, I'd been here before. I was fat girl cred for the hot guys. I was a curiosity. I was perceived as easy or desperate when I went out because of my size. Being bigger than cute pudgy, and not looking like a plus-size underwear model with an hourglass figure 24/7, I hated to admit it, but more often than not that perception was accurate. Then there were the days I had self-confidence for miles. I knew my worth, and I probably could crush a watermelon with my thighs if I tried. Those moments tended not to be when I walked into a nightclub or a bar. Those moments happened on the dance floor when left alone. I got lost in the music, or when I was studying, or at work. It rarely coincided with the times I actually needed it. Something about these two, and having gotten past the mistrust of them within this entire foreboding situation, had my confidence in place. And if my confidence had personification, she was standing with arms akimbo and her heels dug in while wearing chainmail with wings on her helmet. She didn't care if they were just toying with me for a hookup. I wasn't looking for a relationship with either of them, but I would take a good romp in this bed, if the situation allowed for it. I ripped the bandage off my wrist, and held up my damaged arm with its 2 dark bruised and bloody puncture wounds. "Talk to me," I demanded. "Gustav isn't the only vampire here, is he? My loves." Faster than a blink, Rupert had his hand gripping around Gray's throat. "What did you tell her?" he hissed out through clenched teeth. The gold glow returned to his eyes. Gray grabbed at Rupert's arm. His expression was equally as fierce as he fought back. "He didn't tell me anything," I yelled. "Stop it or I'm walking out that door." I pointed to the heavy wood door I assumed opened onto a hall that led back to the party. Rupert dropped Gray with nostrils flaring like an angry bull turned to face me. "I figured it out and Fangboy, you pretty much just confirmed everything.